Today I'd like to do a little demo on how you can make a rattle using rawhide rolls. Now this obviously is not the traditional way of making a rattle, but I was trying to think of a way to make these a little bit cheaper, or so that if you just want to make one or two rattles with your students, you can do this, as opposed to having to go buy elk hide, which, you know, if you go down to Vancouver and buy this, you get a humongous sheet, and they're about $300, which is very expensive. And then you have the huge sheet, and you have to cut these hard pieces down, you know, into all your little templates, your little shapes that you need. But I just wanted to offer an alternate way if you don't have the funds to buy a great big sheet of this. This is how we can do it. So I went to the dollar store and I found some rawhide. It was only, I think this was $1.50, $2 for a package, and it comes with 6 rolls. As you'll see, I'm going to show you that I'm going to soak them and unroll them. And it turns out that each one of these rolls out to be enough to do one side. So basically you're going to need 2 rolls to do both sides of the rattle, and that means you have 4 left in this package, so you could technically make 3 rattles for about $2, you know, minus your sinew thread that you're going to need for stitching it together, and whatever you're going to use to make the rattle sound inside. I used popcorn, so that wasn't very expensive, and I also used sand for filling it until it dried. And you can decorate it however you want. I also, which I'll show you in the video later, is this handle. I even gathered my own handle, so just from going to the park with my dogs. And so that also can save money, as opposed to having to purchase wooden dowels for everybody. So you can do this for fairly cheap, and it's a great experience to pass on to your students on how to make an Indigenous rattle, and it's also very fun to do. Okay, so let's just jump into the clips that I have taken while I made this one. Rawhide, and I am going to take them and soak them, and then I'm going to try unrolling them to see if I can make a small rattle out of these. What I'll probably do is just put some water on top like that to keep these submerged under. Okay, so let's take a look at what this is going to look like now that I've had it soaking for a bit. And I'm going to try unrolling it. So, I think this one was the better one. Okay, yeah, so this one. Now I've unrolled one of these after soaking it. And now I can try cutting out taking my little template that I made and cutting this out. There's sort of a side that's a little rougher than the other. On the rough side is where you can do a little tracing if you want, because that's going to be the inside anyways. But it's hard to do because when it's wet, your pen doesn't really stay on very well. Okay, it's actually probably good to cut them both out together if you can. because then they'll be exactly the same size. Otherwise you can just trim them to be the same size later. Works much better. Just get a couple clips to clip your piece of paper on for when you're cutting so it doesn't move around, and then just cut this out. Make sure that both pieces are the same. We need to consider is the stick that you're going to be putting in here. And if you're just going to buy a package of wooden dowels from somewhere, they have all different sizes. Like these ones are thicker, and I personally prefer to go gather my own stick. I like the roughness of it and the fact that it's from nature. So I'm just going to use this one. But they're about, actually these are almost the same size. But on this one that I made, I had a much thicker handle. So you have to take into consideration this part right here. And you might have to trim this smaller. And if you're using a bigger one, then you have to measure before you cut this out, because you might need to make this part a little bit bigger. But basically you can put your stick in here and just kind of do a test. So if we're going to be, I don't know if you can see this, but this right now, let me see if I can get it here. This right now is going to be too big. So I'm going to make it a little bit more narrow because it's going to be too big once I sew it together. So I'm going to just cut off a little bit here. And I can probably cut them both at the same time, just to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so now that I've got both pieces cut out, I'm putting them together with some clips so that I can see where I might need to clean up to make them closer to matching. So you can just trim off any areas where there's extra. You can start punching holes when it's wet. It'll be too hard to do it when it's still hard. So you just go around the whole thing making holes in both pieces at the same time so that they're matching. Or I've heard other people will just take a nail and hammer through with a nail. So you don't necessarily have to have all these fancy punches. Okay, and once you've done punching through, you can check for spots that maybe didn't go all the way through, or that you need to just push out this last little piece. You can use any kind of sharp thing to finish pushing it, taking out this stuff. Make sure your holes are completely through, and then we will start sewing it up. Okay, so now I got holes all the way around. I want to keep my pieces together so the holes line up. Okay, so the next step is going to be sewing it, as I said. And I've got some sinew here, and probably about 6 feet I would take. And then you can divide it in half or even 3, depending on how big your needle is, and then share half of it with your neighbor. Let's pull this apart. Okay, so now I've got 2 pieces and I can give one to somebody else. And we're going to be doing a crisscross pattern, so you can either do this with a needle at both ends, or 2 pieces, or what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my in exactly half my string. So I'm going to put my pieces together and wait until I get to about halfway, and then I'm going to pull it through till I get to this section. Okay, so I'm going to pull this through till I get to where my halfway was. Okay, and then I'm going to have this string on this side, which you can either use a second needle on, but we probably will only have one needle each, so we will have one needle. So I'll work on this half of it first, and I will work on going all the way around. Oops, that wasn't supposed to go there. That was supposed to go over to the side. Okay. I will continue going all the way around one way. And when I get to the other end, I will take the other string that's on the other hand, switch the needle over, and then I'll start doing a cross stitch the opposite way. Okay, so now that I'm at the end and I've done one row of stitches all the way around, I'm going to take my needle off of this end and switch over to this one. Okay, so thread it onto the other side, and now we're going to form like a cross pattern. So I want to go over here. If I can line up the hole. And go through here. So I'm going to do this all the way around. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look on the side, it's kind of making a crisscross pattern. Which will help hold everything in once we fill it. And actually I ended up, I still had about this much string left, but I told you the wrong amount. I actually had 8 feet, and I divided that, you know, half for each. So it ended up being 4 feet to go around, but I still had some left over, but I want to use that for, in case I want to hang it when I'm to dry. Okay, so I finished sewing all the way around. You can see it makes like crisscross pattern. And now I'm going to fill it with sand. Okay, so I filled this with sand and kept pushing it down to try to make this rounder. I just made myself a paper funnel to put the sand in. And today when I was out walking my dogs, I found some branch, like sticks, I guess, and I was thinking, hey, these would be good for making the rattle with. It'll have more meaning to me if I use something that I found. And also it's from the dog park that is going to be closed down, and they're building, I think, a rec center there, so I think it's going to have even more meaning to me. So I'm just going to stick this in here for now to help it have the shape when it dries. And these leftover pieces sinew, I'm going to actually wrap them around here for now. We have to let this dry for about 2 days or until it's hard again. And then we will dump out all the sand and fill it with something like popcorn or rice or beans. And then we will, after that, we can decorate the around here with some feathers or some leather or beadwork, whatever you'd like to do. And the sand is just in here to help it form its shape when it dries. Okay, and I'll either leave it like this to dry, or I might see if I can hang it so that it dries. There we go. Start of a rattle. Okay, I found a spot in my kitchen to hang this to dry for a couple days. Okay, so I've had this drying for 2 days and it is nice and hard now. And I have already loosened the wrap I had around the stick, and I've already loosened the stick. I'm going to pull it out all the way now, and I will just dump out all the sand. And there we go. Now I can put the stick back in, and I could maybe put a little bit of glue in with it if I wanted to. And once I get that back in there, I'm going to seal everything off with some Mod Podge or some Opus Medium or what have you, and then I'm going to decorate the stick a little bit. The holes I notice I made are a little too big, so next time if I did this I might use a smaller punch. But once I seal this over with Mod Podge or some sort of sealant, it won't matter. It'll all be sealed up. Okay, I've decided to put popcorn in mine, and it's about 1/8 of a cup. You could also use beads, leftover beads like pony beads or beans, you know, whatever you have. And so I put my about 1/8 of a cup in here. It already makes a really nice sound. And now I'm going to put some coating on here and decorate the handle, and I may even do some painting on here. I'm just coating this, and it'll dry clear, but it'll help seal everything up. Okay, so you can paint yourself whatever design you want, or you could try putting a tattoo on. Just gotta remember to peel off the plastic on top, and then we'll just put this down here. Let's get this wet. And use a sponge to flatten it. Alright, and here it goes. Let's see if I can peel this off. Yay! That was easy. Okay, so here's my final result after I've decorated it up. So I hand painted some of this, and then I covered it over with Mod Podge to seal it all in. And a little summary that this was using rawhide I got from the dollar store in little teeny rolls, which I soaked and rolled out and then cut my own shapes, and basically it really cost me pennies because there was 6 rolls for $2 in the bag, which one roll made 1/2, so like less than $1 for the rawhide. I think it would be a great thing to do with your class. Okay, everybody. Till next time.